Hi, welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Miller. I'm a stroke survivor and grateful recovering alcoholic. Today I want to talk about who am I? And this is an interesting question that I was thinking about this morning because who I am today is not who I was 10 years ago. And I was thinking about how I changed, like what changed me. My whole life, the first 42 years of my life, I always said adamantly that nobody changes. People can't change. That's the quote. People can't change. People don't change. And that had always held true for me from my perspective. And it wasn't until I went through the first couple of years of sobriety and took a look in the mirror and realized, I don't think I can say that anymore because I have changed. And I felt it just through and through that I have changed. And the more I was interacting with other people who knew me well, they told me that I had changed. It started with how, my appearance started changing. I got color back in my skin. I put some weight on. And then it started being apparent on the inside, specifically in my way that I communicate. My word choices, my mood. And so I thoroughly believe now that I was wrong. People do change. And I think it all starts with communication. That's how I ended up beginning my journey of recovery, was communicating to another human being, life-saving communication, that I needed help, that something was wrong and I needed help. And as I entered into this sobriety program, you can see the word God like all over the place. And I thought, well, this is just, maybe I'll try it, but I'm not digging this whole God-centered thing, like, is it a cult? I don't want to be a part of this. But I gave it a chance. I was willing. I was gifted with willingness. And the more that I heard other people talking about how they handle this concept of God in the sobriety program, the more I was willing to build my own conception of God and my higher power and all that. I didn't know when I first walked into these meetings that I got to pick and choose and make my own decisions about what faith means to me. And what I learned is that there were people in the room, there are people in those rooms that don't believe in God at all. And there are people who have spent their whole lives Catholic, and they were no better off than me at this alcoholism problem. It wasn't like God was, that they had a better chance of getting and staying sober than me. And so even more, I started listening and having faith in the program just by watching other people. So over over this time that I've been in sobriety, I have found that being able to talk to other like minded people, other people that suffer from the same disease as me, gives me, um, a comforting environment. And I can talk with candor. I don't feel alone. I used to go to parties and, you know, hang out with my friends at bars and stuff, and man, I was in a sorority that had like 50 some people in it, and I would sit in one of our meetings for our sorority, and I felt alone sitting in the we were all sitting in a gigantic 50 or so person circle on the ground, and I felt alone in the midst of all of those young women. And it wasn't really until I was open and honest with one person and communicated that I needed help that the door just cracked open slightly. The the ability to, I realized that when I talk, I can connect with somebody else, that the world isn't out to get me, that people do care. I feel like throughout my life and throughout my drinking that I just built this, more and more built this understanding that I need to protect myself, and nobody cares about other people the way that I do. Um, I think it's because I, the more that I was allowed myself to be vulnerable around people, the more I was getting hurt. The more that I realized that everybody is just out for their own good. That's what I felt like. And I was proved right so many times that I felt like, okay, well, I guess this is what growing up is. This is what life really is with other people. And I have to learn how to be brave and strong, and I have to continue to build this thick skin around me and protect myself. And so that's what I was doing until it seemed like a job that was so overwhelming, and I clearly could not get my skin to be thick enough. And that's where alcohol came in. It added a layer, it numbed a layer around me so that things didn't hurt so bad. Or maybe they hurt, but I didn't feel it so much. The impact, it was still hitting me, but it didn't jar me as far. I got loose. You could push me around, and I kind of just would go with the flow and bounce back a little better when I had alcohol in me. And so today I absolutely find that my disease of alcoholism was a rare gift that I was given. It was a gift of extreme suffering that enabled me to grow bigger and faster than I ever would have if I wasn't an alcoholic. it also is a gift that allowed me to be able to connect with other people uh, just like me, so that I could finally stop feeling alone, that I could finally feel like I was a part of something. Um, and I feel like that feeling of being alone and not a part of, this is just again another like learned concept I had in my life where I just wasn't good enough. You know, I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't pretty enough, I wasn't good at whatever it is enough. And and when I have entered into sobriety, I've been able to recognize that there is something that I'm good enough to be at, you know, and that's all that mattered in the beginning, was that there were people that accepted me no matter what. But the only way that I could figure that out was to open my mouth and share about what was going on inside me, to get vulnerable. And so there is just this incredible importance for me around making sure that I share my experience, strength, and hope. So in the beginning, it was just sharing my experience. And by sharing my experience, I, again, the door just cracked open a little bit. I realized that um, by saying just a few words and mentioning that I'm in pain, um, by shedding a tear and having nobody judge me for it, made me feel just a little bit better. And so I wanted to do it again. And I was so nervous to share. Um, I spent so much time thinking about what I was going to say if I shared, that I almost stopped listening to what other people were saying. But I found out later that that's completely normal. That there are a lot of people. I mean, it's not like getting up on a stage and taking on a role as an actress. You're not showing any vulnerability to a degree, you know. I did a little bit of acting when I was in high school, and I was really good at it. I won some awards, and I do regret. I'm not supposed to regret things, but I do regret not choosing to pursue that in college, because I was good at it and I had a healthy level of anxiety about it. But this, you know, it's easier to stand on the stage and be somebody else than it is to sit in a room and be yourself and talk about what's going on inside where that nobody can see. You know, how many times throughout the day do you actually tell somebody what's going on inside of you? Stuff that they can't see. Um, I never used to do it at all. If I did, I was drunk and I don't even remember what I was sharing, you know? And who knows how much I may have stretched the truth or exaggerated or something like that. I don't recall lying, like straight up lying at all, but I guess stretching the truth is lying. Exaggerating, like my sister-in-law says, anything that comes out of my brother's mouth, cut it in half, and it's the same for me. um, so being able to start talking about what nobody else can see inside of you is where the freedom is. And by going to a sobriety meeting every single day, it allows me to live that one day at a time way of living. By going at 7 a.m. to my meeting, I'm able to talk about what's on my mind and in my heart today, just for today. And so it's really, it's daily therapy for my emotional state, for my mental health. And I don't know why I get to be one of the lucky ones that where it's stuck. There's so many people that I know that I've interacted with in my sobriety program over the years who aren't here anymore. There was a guy that I sat next to in my IOP program who I became really good. I mean, I felt like we were friends. We were really good friends. He was probably the person I felt the closest to in that IOP program, and I found out later that he died, and I still have his phone number on my phone, you know. And then my friend that died a year and a half ago, he drank himself to death. That is my understanding. I haven't dug too much into it, but I did follow up later just to, I know they were doing an autopsy and that's what the conclusion was. At least that's what I was told. So the fact that I'm still sitting here and have been gifted with the opportunity to show up every day and practice this is why I'm so committed to these habits that I have. I do the same thing every day because, for example, yesterday I did it and I was sober yesterday. So I'm going to do it again. So I do it and I'm going to do it tomorrow, you know? And by practicing honesty in the program, I don't have to be afraid of being accepted for who I am because I started out that way. I started out with a really short share, crying, of course, because I couldn't stop myself because I just had so much pain inside me. And when I got this positive, comforting response, I knew that I could show up the next time and be honest, and I would be accepted for who I am. And what I was reminded of this morning was when I was I really throughout my whole childhood throughout, I guess forever. I guess I've always done this. I tend to become friends with somebody and I absorb some of their personality, you know, some of their quirkiness. I'll start doing it. It's almost like when I went to school, my roommate, my just favorite person in college, she had a really, really thick Southern accent. And so when I would come home for breaks, I had like this Southern accent and people could hear it. And it's not something that I purposely said, oh, I'm going to try to talk like a Southern person. It just rubs off on you. And so I was very open to letting other people's personalities and quirkiness like rub off on me because I found that they were accepted by others, and I thought they were funny. So I don't know again if I chose to do it, but it just, I'm sure you're familiar with it. Other people's personalities kind of, we rub off on each other a bit. And, two best friends, they will almost mirror each other in just their body language, gestures, and the words that they choose. So, what what I do today more than I used to do is is I absorb the I can't think of the word. I absorb the successful traits of other people. If I see people in the program and they say, um, I get on my knees every night before I go to bed and be grateful for my sobriety and that I'm still here. I didn't do it right away, but when I really watched that person and saw how happy uh, and free they were from just their own demons, then I decided, oh, maybe I should do that too. Or I see somebody who is meditating and they just really have a calm feeling about them. Then I decided, I'm going to try to meditate some more. And and so I feel that as I continue to get sober, I'm absorbing the characteristics and personalities and traits of the people around me who are sober. I also needed to go to an addiction therapist. And by doing that, this also, I feel, was a pivotal moment in me starting to change who I was. I didn't know that's what was happening, but after the fact, I see what impact that had on me. And when I sat with this addiction therapist, we talked about, classic therapist, where they're like talking about your childhood and different relationships that you have in your life and what your perspective is of those people, places, and things, and of those memories, the experiences, the relationships. And they are able to start being able to understand who you are better. What has built the foundation of who you are and the choices that you make today. And as I would talk through these memories that I had and the relationships that I have, I was able to be open and willing to understand that my perception of these memories is very much based on other experiences and memories. And as we would talk about it, for example, we talked about my relationship with my brother. And I felt that, when my brother, if you're listening, I love you, brother. I felt like when my brother graduated from college and he moved to the West Coast, like immediately, he jumped in his VW bus with his dog Bob, and they drove across the United States um, and took root out there in Lake Tahoe. Um, and he has lived thus far. He lived out there in that area until he retired from our business and now lives um, in the beautiful state of Montana. But I was telling my therapist that I felt like I was abandoned. I had extreme abandonment issues when I first got sober. Extreme. Like, my son had just gone off to college, and I related that to my brother going off to the West Coast. It was extremely painful for me. And the way I dealt with it was I stopped communicating. Um, when my son went to college, I actually shied away from communicating to him. And it was, I felt like, not, it wasn't his fault. It's just my own feeling that I had built around when somebody leaves, that they never come back. Um, I named for my therapist everybody who has left in my life and never come back. Everybody. And that's what it ended up being. It was everybody. I gave an example of everybody who left and didn't come back, except for my mom. She was the only one that never left. And so the more we were able to talk about that fear of abandonment, the more she was able to encourage me to see that nobody ever abandoned me. These people never abandoned me. I chose to not reach out to them. Like, it doesn't matter that they didn't reach out to me. I mean, it matters, of course. But just as much as they didn't reach out to me, I didn't reach out to them. Like, relationships are two ways. And once she opened my eyes to that, I was able to start reaching out to people and not being afraid that I wasn't going to be accepted, or afraid that these people weren't going to meet my expectations, that I was going to be let down. I stopped feeling that way. And my relationships with everybody have improved since then. When I stopped waiting for people to reach out to me and started reaching out to them when I'm thinking of them, my whole life, it was like a 180. It was a 180. And I talked about the other day on my baking episode about how I also, throughout my life, never used to invite people over. You know, when I was a kid, I didn't invite people to come over and play. I expected them to invite me over. And the same holds true in this communication as an adult, that I wait for people to contact me, and I don't need to do that. That it's, I'm responsible for my own happiness, and I'm responsible for my relationships. Other people are not responsible for my relationships. So I've learned just another way of changing who I am and how I behave. And as I've changed, the way that I see the world has changed, and the way that the world impacts me has changed. The way that other people impact me has changed. And it's progress, not perfection. I I I still can feel hurt, of course, by other people, but these other habits and suggestions that I've learned in my sobriety program have helped me um, in other ways around these painful experiences we have with other people. And so, just to finish it off, I was thinking of an analogy of what I feel like now, as far as it's not just, yeah, it's not just how I behave, but it's what's going on the inside. And I no longer feel so much um, like I'm severely damaged when something happens to me, when somebody may say something hurtful to me, or when somebody maybe even unintentionally hurt me. I'm not so permanently damaged from that. And so the analogy I was thinking of was, if I were a piece of Play Doh, a big lump of Play Doh, when I was drinking and in the beginning of my sobriety, when I was more walking around like this open wound, like so fearful without the alcohol that I was going to be severely hurt by other people, I was like a big wad of Play Doh. And if somebody said something to me that was maybe not even intentionally hurtful, but I interpreted it as, hurtful, or it hurt my feelings, it was like if you just punched the side of a wad of Play Doh and it just left a big indent. And today, I'm still that Play Doh because I still am molding myself every day. It's a continuous journey, and I'm being molded constantly into who I am. And who I am 10 years from now is going to be different than who I am today. And I picture myself today, like I've talked about picturing myself in when I'm really anxious, sitting in like God's hands, like sitting in these gigantic hands. And so if I were Play Doh, then it's like God's hands are just gently molding me every day throughout the journey. And every time I learn something new, every time I get vulnerable, and every time that I'm in a situation where I'm fearful, um, I try to shift my mindset, and I'm getting fairly good at it, but I'm not perfect at switching from fear to opportunity, and thinking, this is an opportunity for me to learn, and it's gonna suck. Sometimes it sucks when I'm like, this molding, however God is gonna mold me today is gonna suck, and I might not want to be molded that way and be resistant, but nonetheless, I'm gonna be molded. It's out of my control, and when I get to the other side of it, without a doubt, I'm always grateful for this new perspective that I have on things. So that's what I have to share with you today. And I finally got to record bright and early in the morning. I know you're impressed. I'm impressed with me. So thank you for listening, and share this with a friend. Don't forget to click follow, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.